Lots of you. Thanks for coming. This is quite a crowd. My name's Jeff Mann. I'm an associate professor of creative writing here in English. A few little announcements, or warnings rather, one of them. And then I have a little introduction. So first, many thanks to Katie Powell and the Women's and Gender Studies program here at Virginia Tech for sponsoring this event. Second, thanks to amazingly efficient MFA student Lisa Sume for handling the complex sound equipment that would surely flummox an old daddy bear Luddite like me. I know how to turn it on, which is actually a little complicated. You have to know where the button is. That sounds like advice for Friday night date, but anyway. Third, please silence your cell phones and other buzzing, ringing, puling, snarling, and hiccuping communication devices that everyone seems addicted to these days. This from the last man in America who does not own a cell phone. All right, the official intro. I encountered my first drag queen when I was 18 years old in the late 1970s during my freshman year at West Virginia University. I was a shy, insecure bear cub lumbering around in my first black leather jacket, just beginning to cultivate a decent beard and a sparse crop of chest hair, and trying hard to figure out how to reconcile my homosexuality with the traditional images of Appalachian masculinity I've been brought up with. Miss Corley, a drag queen friend of friends I encountered at the local gay bar, seemed to care not a whit for the conventional manhood I was enamored of and so bent on emulating. He was an outrageous, flamboyant creature who prided himself on resembling the blonde actress Suzanne Summers and who regaled me with tales of his erotic exploits. He taught me that a drag queen would say or do most anything. This was mildly frightening to a sheltered kid like me who'd grown up in a small town in southern West Virginia. When, one night at the bar, Miss Jerry's cohort, Miss Leroy, gave me an indignant cussing over God knows what small slight, I was mortified, intimidated, and thoroughly chagrined. I was also educated. Never, never, never piss off a drag queen unless you are aroused by the thought of being publicly humiliated. When on Halloween night 1978, Miss Jerry and Miss Leroy came to the bar in full drag, complete with parasols and humongous hats, had a few stiff cocktails, and then sashayed out the bar door and up Pleasant Street, I was flabbergasted at the courage such a public display must have taken. Addicted I might have been to the bravery of mythical Greek and Roman heroes, Arthurian knights, and Confederate soldiers, but I knew I would never be as brave as those two furbelow drag queens stalking the midnight streets of Morgantown. Several decades later, in the 1990s, I began to publish creative nonfiction detailing my struggles to integrate my gay and mountain man identities, and I began speaking on LGBT issues at annual conferences of the ASA, the Appalachian Studies Association. Several queers introduced themselves at these conferences. One was Okie Napier, a sociologist connected with Marshall University. When he was younger, Okie told me, he'd been a drag queen named Eileen Over. He'd encountered such homophobic violence in his native Wayne County and Huntington, West Virginia, that he carried a brick in his purse. I thought that juxtaposition was downright delicious and often took vicarious pleasure in the thought of a big, ferocious drag queen beating the hell out of hapless homophobes. On the other hand, Okie was so large and impressive that he made me, a fairly brawny, bulky guy, feel small. I don't think he ever really needed the brick. The friendship that began with those brief simpatico conversations at ASA conferences has blossomed. Now, when schedules permit, Okie and I converge on my family homestead in Hinton, West Virginia, to join my best friend, Cindy Burak, a lesbian political theorist and women's studies scholar at Ohio State University, for what I call big queer weekends, complete with lots of wine, booze, country cooking, and obscene pastries Cindy smuggles in from Just Pies in Columbus, Ohio. Highly recommend. Leather bears and drag queens and bull dykes, oh my, is the apropos media reference, I suppose. We like to think we compose a triumvirate that any self-respecting Christian fundamentalist would find sinister, sordid, and horrifying. I've even put all three of us into my upcoming novel, Insatiable, in which our two alter egos, a witty drag queen witch and two surly vampires, take great pleasure in dispatching a West Virginia coal company responsible for the environmental degradation of mountaintop removal mining. The good news for those of us gathered here is that, after years of retirement, Okie revived his drag persona, Miss Ilene Over, in a session of the 2014 ASA conference that I attended in Huntington. Since then, Miss Ilene, a rampant vixen of the First Order, has returned to the stage performing in Rainbow in the Mountains, Confessions of an Appalachian Drag Queen. In the next few months, she's taking that act to all sorts of venues across the nation. Tonight, again, thanks to the aforementioned generosity of ET's Women's and Gender Studies program, she's here in Blacksburg to treat us to her poignant storytelling, bawdy wit, and trenchant wisdom. Please welcome my friend, my queer comrade in arms, Miss Ilene Over.
Ooh, Lordy, the air conditioner's up here. Oh, that feels so much. It is hard to be fat and a drag queen because you sweat enough as it is when you're fat. Then you add 16 layers of this crap and plaster, and you sweat 3 times as much. Now, Jeff talked about, thank you, by the way, for I was blushing without having to paint it on back there when she was reading that. Let's talk. My name is Miss Ilene Over. The miss part, for any of you single boys out there, I'm taking applications. In fact, I got some printed up. Psychological testing is required. Too many bad ex-husband stories. Accidents, Dolores. They're a woman's best friend. Now, I know this is a university. This is not exactly a traditional lecture. This is a sort of kind of lecture mixed with a huge dollop of drag show. So that means that you're probably going to hear words like cocksucker come up out of me, and this means that you can laugh out loud. You don't have to take notes unless you're taking my phone number. Again, applications are available after the show. And you have to pay for the psychological testing. I'm not. So, you know, this is not exactly a bar scene. There we go. This is not exactly a bar scene, but it's a way laid back scene compared to a lecture in a classroom. In the beginning, there was Cher. And on the third day, she made Bob Mackie and drag queens. Everything else fell in after that. In fact, honey, drag queens have been around for thousands and thousands of years in one form or another. And we have been pestering and poking and making fun of and challenging, just like the old court jesters used to do in medieval courts. We got away with it because, well, everybody laughed. Bless her heart. It took me a long time to realize how proud I am of my Appalachian history. Because, of course, I grew up where everybody told me, lose the accent, don't talk about it, it will cause you not to get a job, it's something to be ashamed of. And finally, when I went to Marshall University, Dr. Linda Ann Ewan knocked that shit off me. And I was suddenly proud of it. And it kind of collided when I learned what a wonderful history there are of drag queens. How rich it is. What we've done. For example, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, a wonderful group I might add, has raised thousands and thousands of dollars for LGBTQ issues and been an absolute pain in the ass for the conservatives, which makes them even more dear in my heart. Now, I realized that I had a long history as a drag queen. I realized that I had a long history as an Appalachian. And the two collided, and look what you've got. Lecture has never looked so good. I'm a sociologist by trade. At least that's my job now. I don't have to work the corner anymore. Those were graduate school days. Ramen noodles. I particularly was fond of the chicken flavored. I couldn't stand the shrimp. So, being queer and Appalachian, boy howdy, that's hard in and of itself. You have to reconcile this somewhat, and I use that term lightly, somewhat homophobic culture to being a big old queer. That's hard enough. You throw on top of that being a drag queen in Appalachia, and you've got your plate full. Because not only are you having to deal with all the queer stuff, you're having to deal with fucking with all of the gender roles. And generally, as Jeff pointed out, drag queens are not quiet. I, however, am a dainty, quiet flower. As you will see. But that's a hard thing to work through. That's a hard thing to deal with. And one of the first things that attracted me to Jeff's writing was in, I think it was Edge, a book that he wrote, or maybe even an essay. My memory's going. Age. He talked about the conflict that occurs with queer people between the desire to go to some queer mecca someplace so you can be the big gay, the big queer, the big lesbian, the big whatever. And fewer people will give you grief, and you have a lot more freedom to do that. And then that conflict with the love of the land, the love of the place, the inability to leave it because it calls to you. And it generates this horrible conflict. I have left West Virginia more times than I care to count. And I'm sure the people who help me move every time are sick to death of it. This last time, after I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, for 2 weeks, I might add, before I moved back to West Virginia, yeah. That conflict. When I moved back from Raleigh, I resolved that conflict. I decided that I love my mountains, I love my place, West Virginia is my place, and I don't give a flying shit what people think of me and what I do. It was an epiphany, I suppose, a big queer epiphany. And there I was. And honey, let me tell you, growing up, now I'm going to sound like a grandparent or something. When I was young, I had to walk up the hill both ways to go to school. No, not quite. But I can assure you, there were no queer role models on TV. There was no Ellen. There was no Will and Grace. There was nada, except Images that portrayed people who were so fucked up, they didn't know which end was up, or were completely asexual. There was a character on this sitcom called Soap. He was gay and was the butt of every, no pun intended, was the butt of every joke, just about, but he never had a boyfriend. He was never seen as being gay. Because God forbid, we couldn't see that. Then Ellen came along, got the toaster oven, and that was all of it. Ellen's out. Here I am. Appalachians love to tell stories. And that actually is what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to tell y'all some of my stories, because I'm a storyteller and a drag queen. And telling stories, whether you're writing them or you're talking them, are acts of rebellion. They're acts of resistance. In fact, sociologist Patricia Hill Collins, in her book Black Feminist Thought, says oppressed groups are frequently placed, and if this thing, okay, I gotta stop for a second. If this sucker, this is on wheels, and it just moved on me, and if I go down in the floor like the town cow, y'all can laugh, but then please will some of you come and help me up out of the floor. That's what I tell all my students in my classes, because I'm clumsy. You notice, who's not wearing heels? Moi. Why am I not wearing heels? Because I'm old and don't give a shit. And they hurt my feet. Now, did I used to wear heels? Oh yes. I would have challenged Imelda Marcos. Y'all who are so young probably don't remember that. She had a bit of a shoe fetish, and she had something like 5,000 shoes in her shoe closet or something like that. Back in the day. However, now, not happening. But, back to this. Patricia Hill Collins, who is a sociologist, wrote in her book, Black Feminist Thought, oppressed groups are frequently placed in the situation of being listened to only if we frame our ideas in the language that is familiar to and comfortable for the dominant group. This requirement often changes the meaning of our ideas and of our works, and it works to elevate the ideas of the dominant groups. My favorite author ever is an author by the name of Starhawk. And she says, keeping us silent by whatever means is a method used by those who would oppress. To be silenced is to be kept isolated. When we attempt to create intimacy and support, telling our stories becomes a central act. The stories we tell also create connections, and they break down our isolation. When we can speak of our experiences, no matter how painful, we can make contact. And when our real selves can be seen, mirrored, affirmed, and we can know, perhaps for the first time, that we are valued, telling our stories is an act of healing. The new context created when we tell our stories makes oppression visible. And it makes it changeable. The stories of the oppressed are not told under systems of domination, and telling them can be a revolutionary act. Well, my friends, this is my little revolutionary act tonight with you, telling you my stories. Some of them are funny, some of them are a bit of a downer, but guess what? That's life. I have been called damn near everything under the sun. Queer, fag, cocksucker, pervert, sick. Honey, I've been called it all. And in multiple ways. Vocally, in written form, and electronically. It does not get any easier hearing that bullshit. However, as you grow, as you mature, as you come to love yourself, the response that you give changes. The British have a lovely, lovely little gesture. And that's generally what I do. And it's followed by, fuck you. And if they want to question that, well, there's the brick in the purse that we were talking about. Yes, I did carry a brick in my purse, and I had a chance to use it once. I walked up to go into the bar, and there were 3 fine-looking young men, one of which who was holding a baseball bat, who was going to attach the baseball bat to my head. Well, Mama was having none of that, and I slapped that little boy upside the head with that purse and knocked his ass clean out, and his 2 buddies ran like golden hogs down the street. Now, my only question was, as I stood there and I looked at that young man, well, there were several things that ran through my mind. First of all, I thought, does your grandmother know where you are? But I was also thinking, it wouldn't, because I was in high drag, of course, looking my finest, and I was thinking, would it be too much trouble to undo everything so I could just pee on him? I decided that I'm more of a lady, and I didn't. But it did, I had to think about it. 'Cause, wow, yeah. I have questioned that decision since that time. I have been a big old sissy and didn't realize it, of course, when I was a kid, since I was a little itty-bitty kid. My dad took me one time. I know I couldn't have been. I was not in kindergarten yet, so I was under 5. He took me with him to the local garage that was the hangout for the guys, where they talked about their old women. I can remember how much that garage, even at that young age, stunk. Or maybe it's just that I've painted that up in my head, but it was cold, and he carted me in that garage, and there was an old seat out of some old car, and he plopped me on it, and he went to talking and smoking and drinking, and my grandmother would say he was swarping. He was out swarping. And out of the blue, one of them asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. Well, I was honest. You know how kids are. Oh, if you want truth and honesty, ask a child. They're brutal. What I said was, I want to be a witch. And I jumped up and I cackled. And I ran in a circle a couple times. Well, we went home. And Daddy did not say a word to me all the way home. And that sent the message. That's all I needed to get. I was less than 5 years old, and I knew I had done something wrong. Now, why did I say I wanted to be a witch when I grew up? I wasn't prophetic. I was a fan of this cartoon called Casper. And there was a little witch on there who rode around on a broom called Wendy. And I just loved her. Who the hell wouldn't want to be able to cast spells and ride around on that broom? Well, it didn't stop there. Later, my dad never said anything to me about that incident. What happened, however, was my mother said, "You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You embarrassed your daddy. He'll never take you with him again." Hell's bells, I was less than 5 years old, but that stuck. And thus began the game of hiding myself, hiding who I am. Though I had trouble sticking to that plan, much like Jenny Craig. Because I got to kindergarten, And we got to choose. There was 2 rooms. This was back, actually, it's really cool. I wish the buildings were still there. They were the original one-room schools. There were 2 rooms, but they had built there were 2, and they had built this kind of in-between middle thing where they had put the bathrooms. And I chose the one that had all the clothes for dress up, of course. And back then, unlike now, where they like wear kids out and keep them all day, you had the choice of either staying half a day or going the whole day. Or maybe they just thought we were weak back then. I don't know. I saw all them clothes, and I said, all day. I'll be here all day. I'm good. Well, it came time to play dress up. And guess what I zoomed in on? There was this pretty silk wedding dress with lots and lots of crinoline, and I was on that sucker and had it off the rack and halfway on when this little girl in the class puts her nasty little hands on her hips and looks at me and says, "You can't wear that. You're a boy." Cue laughter from almost the rest of the class. Ha 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 ha. Humiliation at 5 years old. So, I wasn't then who I am now, so my response was not, "Fuck you." I went over and sat in the corner and cried. And my little, oh my God, she's such a stereotype of the old spinster teacher. If you looked up old spinster teacher in the dictionary, her picture would be there. And she ate tuna fish sandwiches for lunch every day. I can still smell the tuna fish. And she carried little brown paper bags, and she reused the paper bags because it was so wrinkled, it's like cloth. She comes over and she says, "What's wrong?" Long story short, she says, "You can wear anything you want to wear." So needless to say, next time we played dress up, guess who was in the wedding dress? And it fit me fabulously. I might add. Well, unfortunately, as you all know from your own lives, sometimes we make decisions and it follows you. There are consequences. Unexpected consequences, like the big old bully that was in kindergarten was in first grade with me too. And one day, we were on the playground for recess, and I never, ever, ever went to the bathroom at school because A, I thought it was nasty even at 5 years old, and B, that bathroom scared the Jesus out of me because it was in the basement, it was dark, and it was one of these old 1920s bathrooms where the urinals were this tall, and there were these big windows that were frosted and had wire in them. It put you right in mind of like some sort of institution where they do experiments on people. It was called a grade school. I went to the bathroom because I had to. And damn, just no sooner had I got sat down and had my pants down around my ankles, in comes the bully with his cronies. It was kind of like Slytherin House and Draco Malfoy. And the 2 boys that are always never have a line. They never say a word through all of the movies. But they're always there, and that's how these 2 were. Well, he grabbed my pants and pulled them off me and shoved them down in a toilet. Thank God someone had flushed that toilet, so at least it was just water. And then he laughed, and they left. And I sat there, and I about half cried, and I thought, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Well, I fished those pants up out of that toilet. I wrung them out, and I put them on. Because what else were you gonna do? However, the teacher on playground duty was paying attention, and she thought it a bit odd that my pants were wet from about the calves all the way up to the waist. And she asked me what happened, and she finally wept because I didn't want to tell her because I thought, oh God, that'll just stir them up. Damn, I told her, and he got in so much trouble. He lost recess privileges, I think, for like a month. And now here's the sad part, I was afraid because I didn't want them to call my parents and tell them what had happened because I hadn't stood up to the bully. So I would have gotten in trouble at home. Well, as the universe would have it, guess what? They changed the boundaries, and I didn't go to over the summer. The school system changed the boundaries, and I didn't go to the same grade school anymore. Bye, bully. So I go to a new grade school. Unfortunately, this is a grade school where 2 of my aunts were. Yeah, and it was a grade school where the maximum number of students was like, at its peak, was like 80 students. It was a small rural grade school. There was lots of wonderful things about it. Oh my God, the food, and we had this wonderful library. It's really where I started reading. First time I ever read Nancy Drew was in that library. George was a lesbian. And if you don't know who George is, read Nancy Drew. Well, I had this fascination. In fact, it was a love that I still have today. I love Wonder Woman. Specifically, Linda Carter as Wonder Woman, because there is no other. And every time we play superheroes, guess who was Diana, Princess of the Amazons?
No.
It was me. Well, I had a big mouth cousin. And she went to the same grade school, and she went to the grade school, and she told everybody that, guess who is Wonder Woman every time we play superheroes? Another gaggle of bullies took to yelling Wonder Woman at me, no matter where I was, no matter who was around. They would yell it. They would push, they would taunt, and I was known as Wonder Woman. Now, of course, I'd be like, that's right, bitch. Unfortunately, back then, I had not built the powerhouse of evil that I have now. And it got to me, and I was terrified again that one of my aunts was going to hear this, and my family was going to find out, and then I was going to be in trouble. Back to that whole guilt thing. This is a recurring theme that I have found in my life. Guilt, 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 guilt. Oh my God, can't let them know about this, can't let them know about that. Oh, we'll disappoint them. Oh my Lord, blah, blah, blah. That shit went on until I went from grade school, and I came to this new elementary school in 3rd grade, until I went to middle school, which was in 7th grade. I entered every damn school year. And there was some physical bullying. And I got to middle school, and it all just disappeared. Because everyone got, I wasn't with all those people. We all got sorted based on our abilities. So they were put in a different group, and I never saw them. And these other people didn't know anything about me. And there was another homosexual who was a little effeminate. I looked butch. Okay. They focused on him. And what's sad is I was thankful. I was thankful that the eye of Sauron had passed and was over on this poor kid. And here's the thing, I've talked to him. His name was Jeff, and we've talked numerous times since then. And I've apologized, even though I really didn't do anything per se. I felt like I did because I didn't stand up for him. But I hadn't got there yet. Hadn't got the brick in the purse. So I hit high school, and damn if it don't all start again. We have this big old long high school. It goes on forever, and then there are these wings off the high school, and it's all glass. It was built in the 70s. You know, very energy efficient.
Yeah, right.
And there are these electric heaters along about midway down, and everybody would lean against those heaters. And my homeroom, of course, was at the far end of the North 40. And I would have to run the obstacle course of all of the homophobia and the nasty words and the threats and the pushing to get down to my homeroom. Finally, thank God, my poor homeroom teacher witnessed it, and I never had to go to homeroom again. That was in 9th grade. I always went straight to, because I was in the band. I was a band fag. And really, I look like Refrigerator Perry in a dress. For those of you who don't know who Refrigerator Perry is, he's a football player. And the football coach was constantly giving me grief because I wasn't on the football field. I was in the band. Add to one more issue. Obviously, I was a homosexual because I was in the band. We know that to be a universal constant, of course. I finally got the hell out of high school, and everybody's like, oh, those were just the best days. No, they were not the best days. And honey, if you think those were the best days, you need some therapy. Mean girls. Shitty guys. Mean teachers. And puberty. Oh my God, that is a mix for disaster. So I go to college, and Jeff has never seen me like this, but honey, I was going to be butch. I was wearing blue jeans, boot cut, cowboy boots. I had a full big old beard, put a hipster to shame, and red flannel shirts. And I actually had, under this luscious, lovely hair, I'm bald as a baby's ass. But back then, I had these long curly locks. They were the envy. All these little old ladies would come up, oh, look at his hair, it's so curly. I wish my hair was like that. I, of course, hated it and tried to get it straightened. I was homophobic. Because as far as I was concerned, I was going to do whatever I had to do to throw the Eye of Sauron off me onto somebody else. Now, I would have never hurt anybody. I was never a basher. That's just not me. Unless people mess with me and they get a brick in the purse. But I would not have done that. But my mouth, I got involved in theater. Such a butch activity. So associated with big butch strong men, yes? Well, amazingly enough, there were homosexuals in theater. And I looked around and said some very ugly things. I made fun of them. I did. I was young. We all fuck up. Now, well, yeah, we all fuck up, and then there's karma. Because we did this production of Evita, and if you've not seen it, you're a heathen. You need to see it. And I was the priest that took Eva Perón's confession when she died. Yes, I know, there was no spoiler warnings on that. It's kind of like the Titanic. It sinks. I took the confession, and there was this long, those long priestly robes. There was none of the shirt and the pants. No, it was like a Monsignor's outfit. So it was one big long robe, and it flared out, and I would spin around in that, and I go, oh, I feel just like Cinderella. But I wasn't gay. Well, some of the homosexuals in the theater department took to calling me Cinderella. They did. And there was a board, and if you've ever done theater, when you go in, it's so the stage manager will know that you're actually there. There's your name, and you check it off for the night so that they don't have to go looking. And every night that I went in, they had erased my name. And what do you think they had put?
Cinderella.
What was that?
Cinderella.
One more time. I know y'all are awake back there. What did you think it said? Wonder what. There's always one in every crowd. I would not have minded that. I was living. How dare they? Well then, the interesting thing is I had, by this time, had same-sex relations with a couple of guys. And the guilt was mountainous. What have I done? Oh my God. Blah, blah, blah. So, there was this guy who was a music major with me, because I was a music major too. Can you imagine? So, oh my goodness, I would never, ever, ever have admitted it at the time, but I had the hots for him. And liquor got involved one night at a party. Ain't that always the way it happens? It was the liquor. And I went home with him, and we had raucous sex, and it was good. I don't know. He remained my friend, and really and truly, as psychotic as I was at that point, I don't know how the hell he remained my friend, because after we'd had this, oh my God, hot raucous sex, I get the guilt, and I inform him that God is speaking to me. And he all but looked at me and said, "Sure, honey." Yeah. God, he was patient. We had to go through that 4 more times before I finally said, God's going to change me. And I went through the God's going to fix me phase and became a churchgoer. Every time the damn doors were open. Every time the doors were open. I was devout. Hallelujah. And then one day, there was a small problem. Do you know what that was? I wanted cock. That's what that was. I craved it. I wanted it. I needed it. And I went and got it, and that was the end of that conversation. Now, this sort of led me to kind of come out to myself. I was like, well, you know, I might be gay. But I can't ever, 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 ever let anybody know. Oh my God, I'm going to have to like graduate and go to New York so that nobody will know who I am, because my parents and family just couldn't stand it, because of course they're fucking little snowflakes. Not really, but that's in my psychosis. That's what I thought. Well, I ran into, wasn't anybody y'all knew. I was just doing an interview for a husband. Why buy the cow? So, I met my first fag hag. And she was a big one. Now, she didn't want to sleep with me, but she was a fag hag. And she was a very loud, outspoken, feminist woman, and I fell in love, of course. And let me tell you how we met. I used to volunteer for the Red Cross. And I used to work on disasters. They'd send me out when there was a hurricane or a tornado or whatever. And I had to go down and make copies, and there was this copier that was from Satan.
Yeah.
And I was out there cussing the copier, and Julia come out and she said, "What?" Well, actually, she said, "What's the problem?" Because she had this big, deep voice, because she smoked about 6 packs of cigarettes a day. And I'm saying, "Oh, I won't copy the fracking. And she hauls off and kicks the shit right up out of that copier, and it started making those copies. Just running, and that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Well, one day, I was a bit down, and I went over to see her, and she was busy. She was, well, hello, people work. You know, she wasn't able to be my personal therapist. And I went to see another person who worked at the Red Cross, and she was busy. And I was just a little down. I wasn't in, a funk, which I'm sure at one point or another, all of us, everybody out there can identify with funk with a capital F. Well, I hooked up with a friend of mine, and we went shopping for candles. Because it was St. Breed's Day, and I was going to burn some candles for Breed. Well, back then, there was no such thing as cell phones. I know it's hard to even think about it. There was not. You had a phone at home, and people left messages on that. Beep. Please leave a message after the tone. I'll get right back to you as soon as I possibly can. Beep. Could you please call blah, 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 blah. How many people remember those horrible, and having to replace the cassette tapes because they wear out, and then all you get is because the cassette tape was wore out. Well, they couldn't get a hold of me. And the two of those two women got together, and they got to talking. Well, Okie came to see me. That's my drag name. Yes, it's a real name too, by the way. O-K-E-Y. I have no clue what the origins of that is, but damn if it's not a conversation starter. But anyway, they're like, oh my God, Okie was depressed, and he's homosexual. We know he's homosexual. He's not told us he's homosexual. He's in the closet. He's conflicted about being homosexual. Oh my God. And oh my God, I'm worried about him. So what are we going to do? We're going to drive to every gay bar in the city of Huntington. Believe it or not, there were 3 at the time. And we're going to see if he's there. So they drive to the first one. They have a beer. One of them's completely comfortable. The other one's like, do you think they know we're straight? Girl, you've got a neon sign over your head that says, I'm straight. I wasn't there. So they drive by my apartment. Now, I lived on the 3rd floor, and the stairwell went right up the center, and for what the hell ever reason, in the center there, where there was a stairwell, there was this little balcony thing that you couldn't even get to. And there were big windows, and it was the old-fashioned big, huge, tall windows. The ductwork ran across that, and there was a piece of plastic hanging down. And they pulled up there, and they looked up, and there was that thing swinging. And they were convinced that I had killed myself. Now, if they had been in their right minds, they would have known that that little ductwork would no more held up my fat ass than the man in the moon. But they were in a panic, and they were just a little bit liquored up. So they went to the next gay bar. Well, by that time, my friend Clyde and I had gotten home, and I was puttering around. You know what I paid for rent? This is going to sound, y'all are going to say, damn, she's old. $150 a month for a 3-bedroom apartment. Yeah, and it was a great apartment. $150, I wish. Hell. Phone rings. I pick up the phone. Where in the hell are you? Home? Where are you? We're at the Zodiac looking for your ass. Get your ass down here. I put my hand over the phone. I looked at my friend Clyde and I said, oh my God, they know. So what does Clyde say, being the supportive friend that he is? I'm going home. I said, oh no bitch, I will push you down those steps. You're going with me. So we go over to the Zodiac. Nasty little bar. But oh, there were some fun times there, and oh, there were some hard times of hard drinking that went on. That was not one of the nights we go in, and there they sit, drinking their beer. And we sat down, and I just immediately said, bourbon and Coke. And they brought it over. About that time, I was telling Jeff earlier about this old drag queen. She used to haunt all the bars there, and I call her Miss Jurassic Classic. And she's a little rough. She'd smoked for 40 years, so she'd be, hello, sissy. One day she looked at me as we were getting ready to do a show, and she said, make me pretty, sissy. And I thought to myself, honey, there is not enough plaster in this country to be able to fix those cracks. But she was a sweetheart, bless her heart. She comes up to Julia, thinks that she's, of course, a cocktail, she can't hardly stand up. She goes over and she goes, and squeezes Julia's boobs because she thinks because Julia is a bit of a bigger lady. Kind of, bigger as in not overweight. Bigger, I mean, she's a big bone girl. Corn-fed, we call it. He thought she was a queen. And he grabbed a hold of them boobies. And he commenced to squalling because he had touched the boobage of a woman. I don't think he had ever done that in his entire life. And he ran out of the bar. I thought, oh God, he's going to get hit by a car. He didn't. And then, after that scene, I'm like, sip, sip. Gulp. That's exactly right. Well, how'd y'all know to come here and look for us? And Julia, who is just about at her wit's end at this point, says, well, what the fuck do you think? We know you're both cocksuckers. That's the hardest coming out I have ever had. So I like to say that, well, I really didn't come out. The doors were blown off the hinges by this big old fag hag with lots of TNT. But that's what started the next. That's what started the next sort of, how shall I put this? Honey, I was at the bars every night after that, and it was my whoring days. The sex was good. So, honey, one time I went to this club, the Zodiac, actually, and it took a lot of courage to go, kind of jumping back in time just a little bit. And I saw a drag show. It was the first drag show I had ever seen. And I was mesmerized by all the sparkles and the fabulousness and the entertainment and all of that. And I thought, I could do that. And I could do it better. 2 weeks later, I was in my Kmart wig, my borrowed clothes, and shitty makeup. And Miss Ilene over had been born. 2 weeks, honey. 2 weeks! Bam! Here I am. Okay. First song I ever did, I actually went to a lesbian bar to perform the first time. Love that bar. It's called Ricky's. Wind Beneath My Wings by Bette Midler, because that was the Beaches was the #1 movie at the time, and every queen I knew wanted to be Miss C.C. Bloom. Give me a stinger. And you know what? I did that. I ordered stingers, and you know what stingers are? Not the things that you pull out of the bee's ass. It's a cocktail, and it's brandy and cream de menthe. If you want a little bit of it, just go have a couple of sips of Listerine. But C.C. Bloom drank them, so I drank them. Oh, God. And that started my bar era. But you know, I'd actually done drag. When I was a kid, I had this intimate relationship with Miss Donna Summer. I had her 45 records. Those were the little outlet vinyl. for you who don't know what records are. And I would lip sync to Hot Stuff, Bad Girls, and on the radio. And I would be in there. How the hell did my parents not know that I was a big mutant queer? I mean, really? But there I was on the radio. Whoa, on the radio. My mother should have guessed something when we always got, after we got older, instead of Easter baskets, we got a gift. And the year that I said, she said, "What do you want for Easter?" And I said, Donna Summer's Bad Girl album. That should have been a clue right there, but it was not. So after my introduction to the bars, I was a regular performer. I was at the bars every night. In fact, there was one I was telling Jeff last night as we were talking. That first week, and I don't suggest that you do this, the first night at the bar, after I finally gained enough courage to go in, I got liquored up and was leading a conga line through the bar. And that week, I maxed out a credit card. Yeah. Yes, honey, that was some cocktails. Buy one for everybody! Because I'm out. I'm with my people. And I did. I maxed out a credit card. And lo, my bar years started, as did my horror years. There's a story that's in my upcoming book, Confessions of Rainbow in the Mountains, Confessions of an Appalachian drag queen. No, I've not had any liquor today. Yet. That's right. There's a glass of wine in my future. Confessions of Rainbow in the Mountains, Confessions of an Appalachian drag queen. Well, honey, one of those confessions is one evening, I was at the bar and I was the headliner for the show, and I run across this gorgeous young man. He was hot, and I thought, if I don't snag this young man, because he was cruising. He was looking for some loving. And I thought, oh, because I don't do the sex thing when I'm in drag. That's not my thing. But I thought, ooh, for you I'll make an exception. So I grabbed that young man. He was this little old thing, and I was dragging him. He's bouncing behind me. And I was in a high drag, and we go around the bar outside, and they would back these box trailers up against the building, and there was like 8 of them. So in between those box trailers, well, we crawled down under one of them trailers, and I did not want to get, because there's grease in the wheels and the bottom of those trailers and stuff, and I thought, oh God, I'll get that grease in my hair. So I got on the bottom, and we had our dirty, filthy way. And somebody poked their head out the door and said, "Ilene, showtime in 5 minutes." So I come up out of there. All the makeup was gone from here down. The wig was crooked. And what's worse, oh, I told you, honey, I was a hoe. What's worse is I go in and my top is tucked in my pantyhose, and what's worse is there's gravel from my ass up to my shoulders in my clothes. So it wasn't like I could just sneak in and nobody would ever know what had happened. Oh no, so what happens? Let's welcome to the stage lights, Miss Semi, 1989. Miss Ilene over. I was called Miss Semi. I still am. There's a reunion. The bar has closed. There's a reunion every year. And do you know them bitches still call me Miss Semi? You cannot get out from under something like that. No pun intended. But you want to know something? It was worth every damn bit of it, because he was F-I-N-E fine. On another occasion, I was in a funk. Because when I came out, my family, I didn't talk to my parents for 4 years. Because I was done. They were assholes. In fact, that's been over 25 years ago, and I talk to them now, but nothing's changed. They're still homophobic assholes. But I try to be polite until my dad uses queer or fag or something, and then I'm like, that's it. I'm out of here. So, my friend Clyde. Oh my God, my tit just. It's alive. Wow. Ladies, don't you hate underwire bras? God, they're cutting into me. Anyway, so my friend Clyde wants to cheer me up. Actually, my friend Clyde and Roger. They're like, oh my God, you cannot stay in this apartment any longer. A, it's going to be clean, and B, you stink. Because I was in a funk. So they get me cleaned up. One gets me cleaned up while the other cleans the apartment. It was an efficiency, so it was easy. And we get it in the car, and we've got a surprise for you, they tell me. Oh, honey. I knew right then it was going to be a night. I should have gotten the liquor before we got started. So we go to Charleston. There used to be, and I just don't even have the words to describe it, this vile, loathsome hotel in Charleston called the Holly Hotel. It was the nastiest, stinkingest, filthiest place ever. And in the bottom of the hotel, there was an adult bookstore. They took me up there to let me feed. So we get in this bookstore, and first thing, I'm like, oh my God, it stinks in here. And Clyde is like, oh, don't pay any attention to that. I'm like, so I get my tokens, which are these little things that look like quarters, but they're not real money, and you drop them in the video machine so that you can watch the porn. Not that anybody really watches the porn because they're busy. And I turn and I look, and I see this sign, and it says, buy 2, get 1 for Fred. And I thought, uh-oh, wowza. And then I turn, and I see another damn sign, and it says, check your zipper. And I knew at that moment that we were in a high-class establishment. Well, needless to say, I did find a fine man. And we had our dirty, filthy way in that little booth. And let me tell you, that's kind of hard to do when you're a big old girl. But we did. About 4 days later, I took to itching. Crabs, happy birthday. The gift that keeps on giving. We're going to cheer you up. That kind of took the shine off. Going out and finding a piece of strange and having a lot of fun with it because, well, you might bring something back with you. Now, this was of course, I was very AIDS aware, and so there were condoms involved and spermicidal lube and all of that. Didn't think about crabs and all of the things that you have to fucking do to get rid of them. Like pull all your sheets and like spray down your mattress, and the embarrassment of going to Kroger's and buying Rid. Rid is only used for one thing, people. Lice removal. It's not like it's Rid. Bathroom cleaner and lice removal system. No, everybody knows. Everybody knows. So, I had an exciting, if you want to hear more of these lurid tales, you can read the book when it comes out in a few months. Because there's plenty. Those that we have just grazed the top of the iceberg. Now let's talk about husbands. And I said I'm handing out applications, I'm taking applications for husbands, and there has to be psychological testing involved. You pay for it. Well, there's a reason. Because I have not had the most luck with husbands. The first one that I attempted was an aspiring writer. And the only thing that I can say about him, oh no, let me back that up. He was not just an aspiring writer. He was an aspiring playwright. Problem was, he had no talent. None. The only thing good I can say about him, and it certainly wasn't the sex, was that he introduced me to a movie called All About Eve. That was the best thing about that relationship. We'll just move on. Then there was the psychopathic liar who created this entire background, and I was so naive that I believed it. And finally, my friend Clyde all but slapped me and said, "Wake up, Clary. He's lying." And we caught him in the lie. And moving on to the next relationship, it was one after the other. And as Leslie Jordan, do you know who Leslie Jordan is? Have you ever seen Will and Grace? Yes? No? Are you there? Do I have to make you stand up like I do my students? Mr. Beverly Leslie? Well, Karen Walker. I thought I smelled gin and regret. That would be Mr. Leslie Jordan. And now, y'all have got me so far off track on this. What was I saying? Oh, he talks about in his show, My Trip Down the Pink Carpet, the fact that where we grew up in the closet and we didn't have very good role models, and we didn't have the chance to actually get out and date and do healthy things. We're just all fucked up. All the queers that are of our age and up. Because when did we get a practice at it? That's not to say that, no, based on the marriage rate in the straight community, they're not firing so good either. But they have no excuse because at least they get to practice at it without any chance of repercussions. And we didn't. So there was no practice. There was no learning by getting burned. We just continued this sort of unhealthy approach. That's not to say everybody did. My God, you should have at least, all of you should have had a methods class at this point or have talked about methods and know that you can't generalize something to everything. But the last story I want to tell you all is about a fellow that I met. His name was Don. That's D-O-N, not D-A-W-N. One evening I was performing at a local club, and this chatty queen, and I mean chatty Cathy. In fact, she did not shut the hell up, ever. And she plopped down beside me, and somebody, another queen, was beating her face. Now what that means is they were not clubbing her face in, they were putting her makeup on. That's a little drag slang for you. If you ain't got this, then you need to watch some episodes of RuPaul's Drag Race. So, Don's there, his mouth never stops. I don't know how, the drag queen who's painting his face, I don't know what kept her from slapping the shit out of Don, because I don't know how she got the makeup on him, but he would drink cocktails just like, another cocktail, please. Just suck them down one after the other. And he would never stop, but he was endearing. And I enjoyed talking to him. And by the time it was his first time in drag. Her name was Samantha Devereaux. And her time came up to go out on stage. He went out, liquored up, staggering. I was like, ooh, girl, she's gonna fall off that stage. Break a heel, break a leg. I fell off the stage once. Sure did, right on top, right on the damn, because they hit the tables put right up against the stage, and I fell right over on top of this table. Thank God it didn't collapse, but I'm here to tell you, I sure as hell scared the shit out of the two lesbians that was sitting there having their cocktail. All of a sudden, this big old drag queen comes falling down on the table. Queens from heaven, honey. Queens from heaven. So I like Dawn. Samantha and I, because of course once she performed, she was bit by the bug. And every night she could perform, she was there. Same queen helping her paint her face, because poor Dawn never could do that actually. And he began to confide in me. One night, in fact, actually, let me back up just a little bit. The queen who was painting his face got lucky one night after the first half of the show, after there was a break, she was nowhere to be found. So Dawn had to deal. He was in a panic because he had no makeup, no brushes, nothing. And so I loaned him some of my brushes and some of my makeup. And one of the queens there in the back, in the dressing room, called me over into the corner. And she gets down next to my ear and she says, "Girl, you need to not loan him your makeup or your brushes. You might catch something." Well, I thought, oh my God, she's got the cooties or something. I'd already had I was paranoid about that. No, that's not what I mean. He's got AIDS. And I was like, really? Or as Bianca Del Rio says, really, Queen? Because at this point, we pretty much knew you didn't get AIDS from using somebody's makeup. So our relationship continued. The queen who told me that literally stopped hanging out with me. She would sit at the opposite end. She was like paranoid as hell. So Dawn and I start talking. We start hanging out outside the club and whatnot. And he confides in me that, oh my God, he's going to be evicted. And that's horrible. Well, there was a reason Dawn was going to be evicted. That's because, honey, she could find everything under the sun to spend her money on except her bills and her rent. I was not good either. I was horrible with it. I did kind of the same thing, but dear God. So we had to help. And I was in much better shape back then. We had to go over and help load up all her stuff because it was about to get set out on the curb. And he could not find a place to go. Because back then, there wasn't really any support for anybody who had HIV or AIDS. There weren't any agencies or organizations, and it was very difficult to get help. It was difficult to get the medication, much less get Social Security or whatever. People who had AIDS would apply for Social Security and they'd be long dead before they were ever approved. Well, I couldn't stand it. I really liked Dawn, but oh God. And I lived in this little, oh my God, one room efficiency thing that had a bathroom and a closet. That's it. And I told him he could come stay with me. Until he got a job and got out and got his own place because I didn't want any roommates. Everything was all right then. Suddenly Dawn wasn't depressed anymore. He was coming to live with me, blah, blah, blah. Now you have to understand that this was during the time that I was at war with my family over being queer. And so they were having nothing at all to do with me, except my grandmother. Granny, little Southern Baptist lady that she is, never wavered. She was just concerned that she might not see me in heaven, and who can argue with that? I've just been polite about that. It's not like she's said ugly things. So Don comes to live with me, and honey, there's only one bed. So he has to sleep with me, and no, there was no hanky-panky going on. There was just nowhere else to sleep. And I thought, well, hell, if Abe Lincoln can do it, I can do it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, read a history book. Well, Don got sick. Not bad, but a little sick. My birthday came, and I didn't hear from my parents. Not the first happy birthday, no fuck you, nothing. And I was in a funk. I was still young. So I go out to get something. I don't even remember what I went. While I was out, Dawn fixed me from the best food that could be had from the local Huntington area food pantry, because we were poor. Fixed me a birthday dinner. And I've never seen anybody who could doctor up commodity pork and make it tasty. He did. And I came back, and he had even baked me a cake. Now, I suspect that he probably went and shoplifted the ingredients to make the cake. But I never questioned that, because it's the thought that counts. And he had gotten me a birthday card, probably also shoplifted. At least it wasn't addressed to somebody else. But that was Don. He was a sweetheart. And he had we did that birthday dinner, and it was really one of the best birthdays I ever had. And he continued to live with me, because of course he didn't go out and get a job. All you'd ever hear from Don was, "Girl, you got any rolling papers? Girl, where did you find the money to get weed? We got rent due." "Oh, somebody gave it to me." I might not smoke it, but I know better than that. Because I didn't. Of all the things I'm allergic to pot. Puts me in the hospital. "What did you do, Mr. Napier?" "I smoked a joint." Don't do that anymore. But anyway, Don gets sicker. To the point where he wakes me up in the middle of the night because he has pneumonia. And he's gurgling, and I'm afraid he's going to drown on his own phlegm. And I have to prop him up. And this goes on for about a month, and it gets progressively worse. And I look after him, and finally one morning, he says to me, "I called my parents." Well, that in and of itself is a major thing, because they had kicked him out when he was 14 years old because they caught him with a boy. And the only reason that Don had come back to West Virginia was because he was sick. And his family didn't want anything to do with him, because he was a queer with AIDS. And you have to understand, honey, back then, people were terrified. There were, in Huntington, I remember there were no funeral homes that would accept the bodies of people who had died of AIDS. We had to ship the bodies to Ironton, Ohio, and have them, wouldn't embalm them, they would cremate them. There were EMTs who would not treat people that they thought might have AIDS, and they died. It was the time of the plague. Mostly forgotten now in media and by younger people, but the people who survived it have not forgotten. What happened with Don? I got up the morning he was to leave, and I helped him, basically carried him downstairs. The person from his family who showed up, his brother, I believe, didn't speak and didn't even get out of the car to help him in. I put his suitcase in the back seat of the car. I helped Don get into the car, and I stood there because it was like 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning, in Huntington, and everybody was hungover or getting ready for church, one of the two. And they drove off, and I stood there with the mist from the river sort of swirling around everything, and they literally disappeared in the mist. And that's the last time I got to see Dawn. And it took me many, many years to realize something really important. I've been looking for a husband, and I had one in Dawn. I just didn't know that's what love looked like, because I'd been told so hard and so often what love is supposed to look like that I missed it when I had the chance to really act on it. There were good times. Oh, honey, were there ever some good times? Read the book. And there were some sad times. Leslie Jordan, again, in his show, Down the Pink Carpet, talks about the number of funerals that he attended. I went to 6 funerals one summer. I was 24 years old. Dawn taught me that love comes in lots of different forms. And I'm not kidding you, I still hear him today. I can hear him as plain as day. Girl, you got any rolling papers? And when I decided, Jeff mentioned in his introduction of me, that I revived Ilene, and it really was kind of like taking those things and going, because all that remained of Ilene of old was one ring. Not that ring. To rule them all, and in the darkness bind them. Oh, anyway, sorry, long story. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, read Lord of the Rings. At least see the movies. But God, I've lost my train of thought again. Oh, when I revived Ilene, I knew that Dawn was going to be standing right there saying, "Go, girl." Because I'll let you in on a little secret. Obviously, you can see I'm a big bone girl. I'm a big bone girl that had a heart attack at 40 because I smoked and had undiagnosed sleep apnea and had to undergo cardiac bypass surgery. I didn't think I was ever going to do really anything again. And look, lecture never looked this good, now did it? Here I am. You know what they say, can't keep a good bitch down. Now, I know, damn, that's hell of a timing, that you all have to have some questions, especially some of you boys want my phone number, I know. But I know that you might have some questions, so I'm going to take a few questions. Hold that thought. Oh yeah, that's much better. And you notice I didn't lose my lipstick either. That's class. So, you got questions for me?
Who's publishing your book?
I hope Lethe Press. I'm confident, but that's I hope. Oh hell, thank you. Guess what? I'm in the 21st century. I have a Twitter account. I have a Facebook page. Go figure in this day and age. And I have a website. And you can get all the information about Ilene over, and you can actually listen to my podcast, Queer and Fabulous. From that website. What is the website? I am an instructor. I do teach sociology. www.eileenover, notice the spelling, .com. You go and check out that website and you can keep up with what I'm doing. I occasionally, not that I'm opinionated, but I do occasionally post an opinion on the website and Facebook. Yeah. Just send me a friend request on Facebook, and there's only one Ilene Over on Facebook. And I will friend you and frighten you, probably. I will go gentle. That's what they all say. So do you guys have any questions?